In a small town lived two best friends, Christine and Jessica. They grew up together and shared every secret laugh and moment of joy. Christine, always full of kindness and energy, naturally attracted the affection and admiration of others. Her radiant beauty and warm personality made her a central figure. Jessica was also beautiful, but to a lesser extent. She was of a more reserved temperament and sometimes overwhelmed by feelings of inferiority, facing the radiant aura of Christine. Yet, she skillfully hid her insecurities behind a smile and a helpful behavior, so that no one suspected the slightest animosity between them. A real hypocrite, their friendship seemed perfect. But, deep inside, Jessica hid a growing jealousy. Things took a critical turn when Christine married Gideon, a hard-working and respected man who often traveled for business. Their union was blessed by two beautiful daughters who looked like their mother every time Jessica visited the small family. She was welcomed with warmth and generosity. Christine shared her happiness without reserve, unaware that her personal success stung even more the heart of her friend, while Jessica moved into her 30s without a serious suitor. People began to wonder, why is Jessica still not married? They whispered every remark, even well-intentioned, was like a stab. She looked at Christine's life, so perfect in her eyes, and wondered why luck was not on her side. The more days passed, the more she felt a growing bitterness. Despite this, Jessica continued to display a smiling face before her friend. She played the role of the faithful confidant, listening to Kristen tell her joys and sometimes even her little marital troubles, like in every union. Yet these confidences only fueled her desire to take her friend's place over time. This silent jealousy turned into an obsession. Although she tried to hide her true feelings, flashes of anger and frustration sometimes crossed her face when she saw the happiness of Christine. Then, one day, Jess made a radical decision. That evening, as she often did, Christine visited her friend. She arrived with her usual smile. Jessica, playing her role of faithful friend, welcomed her warmly and offered her to sit. "You must be tired. Christine, do you want to drink something?" asked Jessica in a soft voice. "Oh, yes, a juice, please," answered Christine without suspicion. Jessica went to the kitchen. It was the moment. With a quick gesture, she took a poison, known for its slow effect. She discreetly mixed it into the drink before bringing the glass to Christine. Christine drank slowly, savoring the refreshment very quickly. She felt a heaviness in her whole body, a sudden fatigue that overwhelmed her. "I don't know why, but I feel so tired. Maybe I should rest a little here," she murmured, placing a hand on her forehead. Jessica felt a pang of panic, but she showed nothing. She had to make sure Christine did not sleep under her roof. "Oh no, my dear, you should go home to see your children." Christine hesitated, but the idea of finding her daughters and resting in her own bed convinced her as soon as she arrived. She lay down without even taking the time to change. A deep sleep engulfed her immediately, but this sleep was not ordinary. The next morning, Christine's house echoed with heartbreaking cries. Her daughters tried to wake her. She was gone in her sleep without a sound, without a last word. Jessica. She played her role perfectly. She shed tears, collapsed in sadness before others after the mysterious death of Christine. A cloud of mourning fell upon Gideon's house. The man, deeply affected, sank into a sadness that seemed insurmountable. His two daughters, still young, cried day and night for their beloved mother. In this dark context, Jessica showed herself particularly present, under the pretext of helping the family to overcome this difficult period. She went every day to Gideon's house. She took care of the children, prepared meals, and made sure that the house remained in order. At first sight, her help seemed selfless, but in reality, Jessica saw this tragedy as an opportunity to get closer to the man she had coveted for so long. Gideon, though grateful to Jessica for her support, remained distant. His heart still belonged to Christine, and the idea of remarrying did not even cross his mind. He saw in Jessica a family friend, nothing more but Jessica, patient and cunning, knew that time was her ally. She played the role of the perfect confidant, listening to the memories that Gideon shared about Christine and sympathizing with his pain. She never let her true intentions show. Over the months, Jessica reinforced her presence. She showed herself particularly caring towards Gideon's daughters, comforting them and offering them small gifts. Slowly, she infiltrated into Gideon's life, placing herself as a comforting and indispensable figure in his daily life. Gideon, overwhelmed by grief and loneliness, found some comfort in Jessica's company every day. She was there listening to him, helping him filling the void left by Christine. Little by little, she managed to break its last resistances. One evening after a long dinner shared, where Jessica had taken care to create an intimate and warm atmosphere, Gideon gave in the weight of fatigue, grief, and loneliness weakened him. Jessica, always patient and cunning, took advantage of the moment to get even closer. "You have suffered so much," she said, placing a gentle hand on his. "You deserve to find a little respite, a little tenderness." Gideon looked at her, hesitant, but he was tired of fighting this woman who had shown herself so present, so caring, seemed to be the only one who could understand his pain. That night, he gave in. Jessica had finally succeeded. She had just crossed the last barrier that separated her from the place she had coveted for so long. Then, one day, she played her most daring card. She pretended to be pregnant by Gideon, which was, of course, false. This revelation upset Gideon, who did not understand how this could be possible. But Jessica, manipulative and skillful, did everything to convince him that she was sincere. She supported her lie by claiming that it was a sign from the universe, a way for Christine to show him that he had to move forward, torn between doubt and his sense of responsibility. Gideon sought advice from his mother. She, seeing Jessica's involvement for months, suggested that he marry her. If only for the sake of the children, Gideon finally gave in, convinced that it was perhaps the best decision for his family. A month later, Gideon married Jessica in a simple ceremony. Jessica, triumphant, had finally taken the place she had coveted so much. But her true face did not take long to reveal once married to Gideon. Jessica gradually revealed her true face, the mask of sweetness and devotion that had convinced everyone, including Gideon, quickly cracked a few days later. She revealed to her husband that she had lost the baby she was expecting. Gideon tried to comfort her as best he could, unaware of the truth. Christine's two daughters, who had already gone through the pain of losing their mother, became the main victims of her cruelty. At first, Jessica used subtle reproaches. She criticized the way the girls carried out their chores, or their behavior, pretending to want to discipline them. But very quickly, her malice took a worrying turn. She forced them to do hard work, sweeping the yard, cleaning the whole house, doing laundry, and even scrubbing bathrooms. These tasks, far beyond their child capacity, exhausted them every day a little more. Although the family owned a car, Jessica refused to take them to school. They had to walk long distances often under the burning sun or pouring rain on their return. They found barely enough to eat. Jessica gave them leftovers cold or spoiled, while she indulged in hearty meals. The worst was reserved for the youngest child, a frail and sensitive little girl who seemed to attract particularly Jessica's hatred. She scolded her for the slightest mistake and punished her severely sometimes by depriving her of meals or forcing her to stay outside in the cold. The little one, who had already suffered from the loss of her mother, seemed to wither day by day under this cruel treatment. She accused the children of complaining needlessly and threatened them with reprisals if they dared speak to their father during his rare returns home. Gideon noticed that his daughters seemed more silent and fearful, but Jessica always managed to divert his attention. She played the role of the perfect wife, ensuring that she took care of the children as if they were her own one day. However, the youngest of the children, weakened by months of malnutrition and mistreatment, fell seriously ill. Jessica, aware that this could arouse suspicion, avoided warning Gideon or seeking help. She pretended that the little girl was faking to avoid chores. The situation quickly worsened one evening as the little girl struggled to breathe. Jessica remained insensitive in the early morning. The little girl breathed her last alone in her bed. The death of the little one caused a shock. When he learned the news on his return, Gideon was devastated. He demanded answers. But Jessica found excuses, claiming that the child had suddenly fallen ill and that she had done everything she could to save her. This tragedy marked a turning point. Gideon, devastated, began to pay more attention to the behavior of his surviving daughter. Although she was terrified of Jessica, the child ended up revealing the abuse she was suffering. This revelation planted a seed of doubt in Gideon's mind, who decided to watch his wife more closely. But the damage was already done. The death of the little girl left a gaping wound in the family. And even if the truth about Jessica's abuse was still unclear, the weight of her actions began to catch up with her. 2 years after marrying Gideon, Jessica seemed to have everything she had always desired: a respectable home, a devoted husband, and a comfortable situation, thanks to the property and business left by Christine. But despite this, a shadow hung over her life. Her abuse towards Christine's children had tarnished the harmony of the home. And although Gideon tried to maintain peace, his daughter's sadness weighed on his mind. Jessica, however, was not disturbed by these tensions. She continued her life, convincing herself that she deserved everything she possessed. But a deep desire haunted her, that of consolidating her place in Gideon's heart by bearing his child. She hoped that a pregnancy would seal their union permanently and put an end to doubts or criticisms. After long months of waiting, Jessica finally announced that she was pregnant. This news was received with mixed joy. Gideon, although happy at the idea of having another child, could not help but notice his daughter's indifference to this announcement during her pregnancy. Jessica adopted exemplary behavior. She showed herself gentler with Gideon's daughter, trying to ease tensions and restore her image. But this facade was not enough to hide the cracks. The child, still marked by her past abuse, remained wary and distant. Over the months, Jessica's pregnancy became more and more complicated. She suffered from incessant pain and frequent discomfort. When the time of childbirth arrived, Jessica was overwhelmed by unbearable pain. Gideon, worried, immediately took her to the hospital. The doctors did everything they could, but Something seemed to prevent the birth. After hours of labor, without success, they declared not to understand what was blocking the delivery. Jessica's pain worsened for 4 days. She remained in a state of constant suffering, unable to bring her child into the world. One of the midwives, an older woman seeing Jessica, shook her head gently and declared, "My son, no remedy, nor herb will save your wife. What she is enduring is a punishment for past actions. If she wants to be freed from this pain, she must confess her sins." These words caused a shock in Gideon, but also in Jessica, who seemed torn between pain and fear, finally cornered by suffering. She burst into tears and began to confess everything she had done. She admitted causing the death of Christine, manipulating Gideon to marry her, and mistreating the children. These revelations horrified Gideon and those present. The woman he had married was nothing but a monster, hidden under a mask of innocence. While she finished her confession, Jessica succumbed to her pain, giving up her soul with the child she carried. Jessica's death left a heavy shadow over Gideon's house for Gideon. These revelations were a shock insurmountable. The man, already marked by the loss of Christine, realized that he had been manipulated and betrayed by the one he had accepted as wife and mother for his daughters after Jessica's funeral. Gideon withdrew into himself. He spent weeks brooding over the events, haunted by the guilt of not having seen the truth. Earlier, Christine's only remaining daughter, for her part, remained deeply scarred by the abuse she had suffered. She became a silent and distrustful girl. She avoided speaking of her emotions, preferring to take refuge in studies and solitary activities. Gideon, for his part, swore never to let another woman enter his life. For fear of repeating the mistakes of the past, he devoted himself entirely to his daughter, giving up his own needs for her well-being. If you listen to the story until the end, do not forget to subscribe and leave a like. See you next time for a new story.